Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ya Ali Madad. I have fond memories of sitting in my grandfather's lap as a child, listening to him sing a particular Gujarati poem with great pleasure. It was only recently that I managed to retrieve the words to this poem, which was composed by Abdullah Jafar Lakhpati, one of the founding members of the Ismaili Volunteer Corps. The poem goes as follows. खोजा उठाओ बोझा कही खोजाओ ने संबोधता गोर कब्रस्तान मां खोजाओ जई ने खोदता ओढ़वाने गोधड़ी नहीं बेसवाने सादरी आज मोटर महल ने सर पे सुनहरी पागड़ी आंगड़ीए शोभती अंगूठियो हीरा जड़ी कोना प्रताप छे बेसी विचारो बेघड़ी साफ कही दऊं छूं सबब खाना आबाद ना खोजा तणी प्रगति थई Pratap Aga Khan. Let me translate this poem for you. The poet says that Khoja, the burden carriers, is how Khojas were addressed, and Khojas referring to the Ismailis of South Asia. Khojas would go to dig graves in the graveyards. Neither a blanket to cover up, nor a mat to sit on then. Now a car, a palace, and a golden turban on our heads. On our fingers, diamond-studded attractive rings. To whose credit is this? Sit and think for a few moments. Let me be clear, it is due to the blessings of Khana Abad. Credit for the progress that Khojas have made belongs to the Aga Khan. You know, my grandfather would sing this poem and then tell me all kinds of stories about how the previous Imam had steered the Ismaili community in South Asia towards progress and prosperity. Today, as we celebrate the 85th birthday of our beloved Mawlana Hazar Imam, it is a good time to reflect on how his wise counsel and prescient guidance has shaped our lives as a community, as families, and as individuals. You know, one of the most significant ideas that Hazar Imam has sought to instill in the Jamat is that Islam is a faith of reason. And in this context, he has emphasized the role of the intellect in the understanding and practice of faith. In fact, he has suggested that intellect, properly interpreted, is a facet of faith. In other words, faith is not just based on what can be discovered through spiritual intuition, but includes the meanings that one can decipher from religious ideas, as well as the grasp of ultimate reality through one's intellectual endeavors. Another aspect of the Imam's guidance that has profoundly shaped the Jamats is the emphasis on a high standard of education. Not only formal education, but lifelong learning too. You know, sometimes young people in the Jamaat wonder why their parents are so obsessed with their children getting the very best of education and gaining the maximum benefit from it. I am convinced that the repeated emphasis on education has instilled its necessity and importance in the minds of every parent in the Jamaat. Equally, when we hear of the many successful businessmen, professionals, and scholars our Jamaat has produced, we ought to recognize the hand that has been guiding the choices made by their parents. You know, another teaching of the Imam has been to respect the religious beliefs of others as their efforts to seek a path to goodness and to the divine. Now, this was also something that our previous Imam, Mawlana Sultan Muhammad Shah alayhi salam, emphasized. And you know, this is consistent with Quranic teachings as well, where Allah confirms that all, including Christians, Jews, Muslims, and those who adhere to other religious traditions, shall have their reward and be free of fear on the day of judgment, so long as they believe in God and live righteously. Perhaps this spirit of pluralism is one reason why Ismailis across the world live peacefully amongst people of diverse religious traditions, maintaining mutually rewarding relationships with all of the people around them. Now, these are just a few examples of how the teachings of our beloved Imam have helped us to achieve what we have achieved as a Jamaat and as individuals. I'm reminded of Fariduddin Attar's Conference of the Birds, in which the wise hoopoe bird leads the birds with all their excuses and frailties to attain enlightenment. In a similar way, our Imam has been our guide, leading us with patience and wisdom and helping us to develop our potential without forsaking our religious responsibilities and our spiritual search. Today, as I reflect on my own childhood, I can see a clear correlation between my parents' choices in all aspects of life and Hazar Imam's guidance to the Jamaat. And this has been true of most other parents in the Jamaat. Insofar as possible, every parent did whatever they could to put into practice the guidance of the Imam. Not only because they understood this as part of the commitment of their oath of allegiance, of their bayah to the Imam, but also because they found his guidance to be reasonable, practical, and contextually relevant. They have seen in their own lifetime how the Imam's guidance has helped to improve the quality of life of the Jamaat, and therefore understood the importance of cultivating these principles for future generations of Ismailis to come. I think one of the reasons why the Imam's guidance has been so efficacious for the Jamaat is because he established institutions that provide a framework for the community to actualize his vision of Islam. When Hazar Imam acceded to the Imamate in 1957, the Ismailis were a relatively unknown community. The community's institutional capacity at that time was quite limited. Growing populations in newly independent nation states meant that there were severe challenges in accessing good quality education and healthcare. In some parts of the world, basic housing and socio-economic needs of the community were yet to be addressed. Through institutional interventions, the Imam sought to ensure that every one of his murids, to the extent possible, had access to these fundamental provisions. Now, trying to achieve this for a community of millions dispersed across some 25 countries is no small task. In response to the human development needs of the Jamaat and the societies in which our Jamaats live, the Imam has focused his attention on various social, cultural, economic, and environmental issues. For this purpose, he has built extensively on the foundations laid by his late grandfather and established what we now know as the Aga Khan Development Network, or AKDN. With over 90,000 employees across more than 30 countries and an annual investment of over $1 billion in non-profit activities, the AKDN is now recognized as one of the largest private development networks in the world. The multiple initiatives and programs under the AKDN have contributed to improving the quality of life of millions of people in some of the most deprived parts of the world. This includes more than 200 hospitals, medical centers, and clinics, reaching over 5 million patients a year, 2 universities, and over 300 educational institutions serving more than 60,000 students annually, as well as the many other projects related to rural development and housing services. At the time of Hazar Imam's accession to the Imamate, there was also limited contact between the diverse traditions that resided in South and Central Asia, the Middle East, and Sub-Saharan Africa. For example, most of the Ismailis in Central Asia were practically isolated from the rest of the Ismaili community. It was the foresight of the Imam to empower the Jamaat to recognize its own diversity and to in turn celebrate this plurality as a strength of the community, Most Ismailis will recall his guidance from the late 1980s, in which the Imam repeatedly reminded the community of its own diversity. He saw it as a strength of the community, not a weakness, particularly as all murids were united in their allegiance to the Imam of the time through their bayat. Now, had this not been managed effectively, it's not too difficult to imagine how tensions might have risen between the different Ismaili traditions, as we have seen unfold across many other communities in the world. Now, with the rapid pace of globalization, the ease of travel and advancement in communications technologies, Ismailis from diverse traditions are now able to connect with each other much more frequently than was possible before. In North America, in Europe, Australia, and other parts of the world, we now have diasporic communities of Ismailis from practically all the diverse traditions living and practicing their faith together. It is important to recognize, however, that this spirit needs to be sustained on an ongoing basis. As Hazar Imam has said, the work of pluralism is always a work in progress. Now, much of the Imam's early activities since his Imamate took place against the backdrop of a rapidly changing world. The community in different parts of the world was confronted with significant political challenges and various other crises, such as the forced exodus of the Jamat from Uganda and other parts of Africa, the crisis in Burma, the partition of East and West Pakistan, the revolution in Iran, the collapse of the Soviet Union, and the subsequent civil war in Tajikistan. More recent strife in Afghanistan and Syria has also resulted in humanitarian disasters and displaced communities. Through all of these predicaments, the Imam and the institutions have provided support to the Jamaat as well as the most vulnerable in those societies. As he said at the conclusion of the Golden Jubilee celebrations, that he has had nothing else of significance in his life except serving his Jamaat. So, as an expression of our devotion and gratitude for all that the Imam has done for us, every year we celebrate his Salgirah, his birthday. The occasion of the Imam's birthday is an opportunity for the Jamaat to reaffirm their love and affection for him. It is also an occasion for us to offer gratitude to him for his leadership and guidance that has helped us to continue to enhance our quality of life, both material and spiritual, all the while strengthening our commitment to the Imam and to the Jamaat. The presence of the Imam-of-the-Time amongst us has enabled the Jamaat to live in diverse contexts without compromising the fundamental principles and practices of our faith. His wise counsel and the institutional structure that he established have supported the Jamaat through many crises. At the same time, he has facilitated the Jamaat to make significant contributions to the wider societies in which they live. So it is most appropriate that we offer shukrana to him, as well as to God for blessing us with the presence of a Hazar Imam amongst us. Some of you may have seen the 5-ring motif that has been created for this Salgirah of the Imam. I'm told that the 3 colored lines reflect the 3 dots of the letter Sheen in Arabic, with which the word Shukr starts. Quite interesting. Over the more than 6 decades of Hazar Imam's Imamat, much has changed and continues to change rapidly. In the process, new challenges are emerging. For instance, the advancements in communications and medical technologies, while enormously beneficial, are also a source of new ethical dilemmas. The social, economic, and racial inequalities, which are often exacerbated by existing structures and systems in many societies, are increasingly leading to tensions, discrimination, and even xenophobia. At the same time, the climate change crisis is upon us, and it is likely to have the most significant impact on parts of the world where Ismailis live in large numbers. All of this and the many other challenges we encounter and will need wise and prescient guidance from the Imam of the time to enable the Jamaat to address them effectively while remaining true to the ethical principles of Islam and the traditions of our Jamaat. So, on the occasion of his birthday, we pray for his long and happy and healthy life so that we may forevermore continue to be guided by his nur. Let me take this opportunity to wish all viewers Salgirah Mubarak. May this auspicious occasion bring much happiness and barakah for all. Perhaps it would be best to end this talk by reminding ourselves of the messages that Mawlana Hazar Imam conveyed to us on the celebration of his 80th birthday. Thank you for listening to this talk, and Ya Ali Madad.
As I think about the past, I reflect where the Jamaat has come from and where it is today and where it is going in the decades ahead. And I think we can conclude that today the Jamaat is a strong community. It is a global community. It is a community with strong institutions, with strong ethics, and is respected around the world. What more could I wish for as the Imam of the time? You could not give me a greater gift than the ability, than the right to say the things that I have just said. So to all the Jamaat leaders, past and present, I say first of all, on my behalf, the Imam of the time, thank you. As we look ahead, the Jamaat is likely to become more and more a global community. But the essence of the Jamaat, the ethics of our faith, the principles which we believe in and which we seek to practice in our lives, are the essence of how our community will stay united, even though it becomes more and more globalized over the years. So I say to the leaders of the Jamaat who are here this evening, that my wish for the decades ahead is that you stand firmly by the principles and the ethics of our faith. Wherever you are, whatever age you are, whatever you do in your lives, it is essentially important to me that the principles of our faith should be respected every day of your lives. This is my hope, and this is my prayer.